You're listening to Well, I Laughed, Part 2 of A Lover Scorned, Wanderlust.
Hello?
Hi. Is this better? I made it
Yes.
the microphone. We received exactly one comment about being like, hey, sorry, like I can't really hear Grant in the episode that you guys just
Don't
published.
worry about it. We're working on
Right,
it.
and I was like, okay, so it's not just Maya. Gotcha.
It was impossible to edit.
Yeah. Hi, hello. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a hat when it is 100 degrees in Denver, it's because I got sunburnt yesterday at our like faculty picnic where we had to like hang outside. I immediately went to the shade, and then we had to take like a staff photo in front of the school at like God knows what time, at like 1:15, and I was in the direct exposed sun for like 20 minutes, and I got burnt.
Oh,
like
no.
just the top of my head. And the thing that's actually most frustrating about all of this, I had a hat on my desk. I just didn't think they were going to make us eat outside. You know, the school is designed to feed hundreds of children. Why would you make us hang out outside? That doesn't make any sense to me. But what do I know? I'm just a professional planner. Teacher.
Good.
So things are good. Yeah. Also, did you know the workday is 5 whole days and like usually starts like before 8? This is news to me. You're telling me this for the first time. This is brand new for me.
I mean, it starts from like 8 to 9 in my world, but
Oh,
depends
actually,
on when your first meeting is.
it was so funny. I love driving over here. I was like, I don't know what I have to say. I have nothing
Oh,
on
I have some stories.
on the cool. Then I'll hit this one, and then I'll hand the mic off to you.
First, though, while you say this, I'm going to find the name that I need to find.
Amazing.
Oh, little Mo. Casey just said that she needs a bed underneath that chair because she keeps sleeping under it.
like during our shows.
No, just like even when I'm working, she'll sleep under there. And I was like, I don't think she does that when we're podcasting, though. And look at her.
She's like fully under.
She's fully under
Okay.
your chair right now. She's a burrow animal.
So oh shucks, no, where was it? And I was going to tell a story about what happened at book club.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, I won the Kahoot. I think everyone needs
Obviously,
to know that
because I wasn't there.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, the gays swept the top 3, so that was good. We are big fans of our English teachers in high school. Oh shucks, what was the story that I was going to tell you about book club? It was fairly inconsequential, then, I guess.
I guess so. Okay, so
It'll come to me. Table's all yours, babes.
Okay.
Table's all yours.
It's gonna feel like nothing's in this box.
Okay.
There is something in the plastic bag inside of this box.
Okay.
I didn't find anything. A listener sent me a link to an eBay site. And girl, the way I bid on that for you.
I am nervous.
This comes from our listener, Meg. I'm just going to assume that I can say the name.
Also, this is reminding me of my dad. When my dad, I don't know, maybe it's because of like the way he was raised as a child.
It's not fragile, so you don't have to like worry
my
about
dad
it.
will shake boxes and we're like, stop. It's so fragile
Yeah.
what you are being gifted right now. Shut. I did not get enough sleep last night for you to emotionally wreck and ball me this right now.
Would you like to tell the listeners what it is?
Why is it still in its original packaging?
I know.
Oh my god, it even has like the well, I'm kind of floored right now. This is so silly. If you have not listened to this exact episode, which was like 2-3 episodes ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a video also just to send her. But
so I mentioned that when I was a child, and the movie Atlantis was coming out, that they had these like little crystal necklaces.
Yeah.
And that I always wanted one. And then in the rare occasions that my mom would bring us to McDonald's, she would request for her like little flowery gay boy in the back seat, a crystal necklace. And they were always sold out in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm not even joking. I have thought about this for like 20 years. Never thought about turning to the internet. And here it is in my hands right now. It is still in the packaging. It even has the little McDonald's logo on it.
it's fully unopened.
I am blown away by this. I desperately want to take it out, but part of me is like, does that then ruin its value?
I mean, you can't sell it on eBay for as much, but it's yours now, so...
I'm almost hesitant to ask. We might be cutting this part. How much did you bid on this for?
It started at like $8. I think I won it at like 30, maybe.
Okay.
Girl, I had notifications set. And I think the other like 8 people that were bidding on this were like, Jesus fucking Christ. Because it would be like, a bid has risen. And I was like, bam. I got into like a mini war.
Please tell me this. I need to know the saga. Please tell me. Walk me through this bidding process.
Oh, it was like maybe, I think when she sent it to me, it was like, there was like 15 days left on it. So I just bid and it was like $8 or something. And I would get a notification on my phone every time someone outbid me. And there was one time that I thought eBay was broken because I've never really used eBay. And then I would go and put in my new bid. But as soon as I hit submit, it was like, you are not the highest bidder anymore. So someone else was bidding at the exact same time as me. And so I just like left the site and came back like 10 minutes later. It was fine because I think that person just like left.
Assume they had won it too.
Yeah, I was literally watching the countdown on my phone while I was setting something up, and Casey was like, "How much more time do you have?" And I was like, 5 minutes. He was like, "Has anyone outbid you?" And I was like, "No, but I might raise the bid by like $5 in the last second just to be safe,
just to throw everyone off."
Yeah.
You need to tell Lydia about this because she is an eBayer.
Oh yeah.
She will absolutely identify. I am truly floored by. Send me a Venmo request,
No, that's all you.
I can't believe I'm holding this. And this is such a small thing, but it's like, I mean, this thing is 20 years old at least.
I know. And you could, I was scrolling through the other eBay things related to this. I think you could buy the whole set from different people on from McDonald's like toys. Isn't that insane that someone got that as a toy and then it sat in some person's closet and like probably was like sold for like $2 at a garage sale until someone picked it up and sold it on eBay, which is like insane to me. But I thought I was getting scammed for a while because someone like this listener sent it to me and it was just a link with no text. And I was like, if I click on this link, they might get all my data, but it's worth it.
Okay.
So I clicked on it and was like, holy shit.
Okay, so I now know I need to bid on something for you. And I say that because I think I already know what it is.
Is it the giant Baby Bell shoes, be honest?
Listen, you know I'm continuing to work that out, okay? Thank you. This is so... I'm not opening it yet. I will decide if I ever open it, what's going to happen. Oh, God. Imagine this. And then just like 4-inch inseam shirts and then a like Hawaiian button up that's only like 2 buttons buttoned.
You would be the hottest guy at Pride.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And I wear this ironically, but like not ironically. You know?
Can't do it anywhere near Casey though, because he already looks like that guy from Atlanta.
He really does.
Especially with his round glasses.
Also, this is, as you'll find out during the main episode, so incredibly well timed too. For what I'm about to share today. Let's just say, babes, this is the vibe of today's episode.
Hell yeah.
Just so you know. Okay. It is more so than usual nominally related to the theme.
I mean, I can expect nothing less at this point.
Like, I got into the story, and then I really got into the story, and then I was like, okay, well, how do I make this, like, actually work for, like, what we're trying to do? And then I was like, oh, yeah, we can just kind of build this section out more. That's totally fine. So I'm super excited for it. What other news of the world do you have for me?
Okay, first, I can't really see out the window, but if you see Bowser doing something weird, if you like see a lot of movement out there, you let me know.
The weirdest thing I see Bowser doing right now is living a life full of joy.
I fully understand that. So here's what happened. Like last week, I was working on replacing some of the cabinet hardware in the kitchen, and I had the dog door open, as I normally do. And Bowser usually just like lays out there, and the only time you need to like go out there and like say anything to him is when he's like barking and like about to knock over a fence or something, which he's not gonna do, but like, you know, whatever. And then Casey comes home and he's like, "Where's Bowser?" And I was like, I saw him at like, I was trying to do the math in my head because I remember like I started working on the cabinet hardware around 5 when I like logged off of work. And then I saw him when I was doing these upper cabinets, which was probably about half an hour later. So I was like, I think I saw him around like 5:30 to 6. And we couldn't find him in the house or in the backyard, or we couldn't see him in the backyard. And I was like, oh my God, if this dog jumped the fence, because I know for a fact he can jump that lower fence.
Right. Does he know he can jump that lower fence?
Probably.
Okay.
He's only ever done it if he's like really scared or like really needs something.
Sure.
He did it at his foster home once or twice maybe, and then he did it on us when we first brought him home. He hasn't done it since, but it's still like we saw him do it. So he's physically capable. And so we thought he was like gone, and Casey was like pissed, understandably, but also like the stress of moving and everything Anyway, we like go back there and we have a huge stack of like cardboard boxes back there, to kind of block Monet from going, because it can go kind of all the way around the back of the garage.
Right.
Bowser was back there.
Like in the box fort?
No, like behind the box fort. And I think he had crawled over it and then like couldn't get back. And so he had been there. The amount of time that I didn't have eyes on Bowser was about 2 hours. So the maximum amount of time that he was back there was 2 hours. But he was happy as can be when Casey deconstructed this like
him.
Tower of stuff.
Well, Bowser needs to know the first rule when it comes to scrambling in Colorado. It's always easier going up than it is going down.
You can go up, but you could be a cat in a tree.
Everyone thinks, like, no one thinks that's true. Everyone's like, well, going up's the scary part.
No, going down is the scary part.
Going down is so much worse.
And it's like, for me at least, it's always harder on my joints. It hurts so bad.
Well, I also, going up, I'm like, I am fearless, but I'm also pretty large, so I can just like lean my body mass against the rock, and I can reach a bunch of places. And I feel very much like center of gravity, like I am one with the earth. Coming down, you're like hanging off the rock ledge already.
You get put in the most awkward positions.
Correct.
The other story I had to tell was on Thursday. Dear listener, the other friends had book club. I had not had time to read said book and also had a lot to get done around the house. So
and was, before the story really gets going, invited to come anyways for the meat, cheese, and snack, like drinks.
Yes. I had told Casey, however, that I would paint the outside portion of the new door and window that we had since installed because it had come primed but not painted. And so, like, if it gets really wet, the wood can rot, whole thing. So I started painting it, and the directions on the can say not to paint in direct sunlight, and that's on the side of the house that gets direct sunlight in the afternoon. And I also had a riding lesson at 5, and so I was like, okay, I will run to Home Depot, get some additional painting supplies, and by the time I get home, the sun won't be as like brutal on that face. And who's gonna paint in the morning? Not me. So it had to be at night. Unfortunately, I thought I only needed to paint the outside of the door. I got home and I had called Casey and I was like, just confirming, because he had already said you only need to paint the outside of the door, or like the outside like molding part of the door, not the door itself. He thought that had come painted, and then he like looked it up on the like Home Depot listing for that door, and he was like, no, you have to paint the whole thing. And I was like, it is 7 p.m. The sun is setting. So cuckoo, and I needed to do 2 layers of paint. Anyway, I turn on my little Hosier album on Spotify and just put on my safety glasses, my work gloves, and my work apron, and then just start painting. And if you ever need like an ethereal moment, paint outside in the dark, preferably with a headlamp.
In a new neighborhood where no one really knows you yet. Really let them know that you are all there, buttoned up. Tight.
Yeah, you're totally stable as you're like singing, "Take me to church." And you're painting.
Meanwhile, you keep bidding on eBay for McDonald's toy that's 23 years old.
I'm fully hinged. Anyway, absolutely insane.
So then you, I wasn't sure where that story was going. I'm going to share the last part.
Yeah,
then.
Go for it.
You sent me a picture in an apron. Because obviously she'd been like, didn't want to get any paint on her.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I had texted you?
That's how I'll remember you.
Oh, no, I meant the next thing that I texted you.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
Which came after I had taken a very long sip of the gin and tonic at my house. And I think you were unwinding in the way you unwind. And I replied with, "Oh, man, are you making something?" Which is a joke about a stupid little story.
You said on the last week's episode,
a week or two ago. And Maya laughed. She said, I was hoping that's what you were going to say. And then I go, our friendship is just a series of more intimate, deeper jokes, inside jokes that 1,000 other people get, but who we will never meet. And Maya's response was basically like, you can't hit me with that right now.
I was like, I just charged my little pen thing. You can't say that to me right now. I literally read that text and was like, whoa.
As I sent it off, I was like, yeah, that one kind of got away from me a little bit. Yeah, that one kind of got away
also,
from me.
Also, never say never. We might meet them. We've met a few.
So true.
Also,
And I
it
keep
just
writing
like
in and it's wonderful.
I was hoping you would say one of two things, either referencing the apron joke or when you last week mentioned that I had like a drill bit and an empty Coors Light can, and you were like, if you're wondering who the masculine energy in this relationship is. And I was like, you have an apron and people ask you what you're making and you say lunch.
Right.
And
I just like have nice clothes. I'm not going to get them greasy.
And people ask me what I'm making, and I like turn on my drill and go like, I don't know. 20 minutes ago, I was sanding wood in our garage. So
20 minutes ago, do you know what I was doing? I was repurposing some old rotisserie chicken meat into a nice little horseradish kind of like dip lunch, and then I had it with Ritz crackers and some leftover espresso coffee.
We need to talk about when we're doing that thing for Patreon.
Yes, we do. We actually, yes, we do. Which I'm excited about.
We can do that this week or next weekend.
Other stories, anything that's happened in our worlds recently. We got some like very interesting fan emails in the last 48
I've
hours.
seen the titles. I haven't read
I
any
don't
of them.
want you to read
Okay.
them. I will let you know. I might turn one of them into a full actual story. We will see. Gosh, I feel like, sorry, just being back at work, there's like so much to do, and I don't want to do.
When
like,
do
any
students
of
come
it.
in? Tomorrow?
Monday.
Or Monday, sorry.
Monday.
Saturday,
Yeah.
sorry.
And
Didn't
then-
mean to scare you like
It's
that.
okay. I mean, not to brag, but I don't get the Sunday scaries, so like that's
Okay,
I'm not
well, screw you.
not worried about it in that sense.
It's fine. Whatever. I'm not feeling any kind of way about that.
Yeah, no, it's a super normal and healthy response that you're having right now.
I love my job. I love my coworkers, and that's really what makes it work.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Thank you for that reminder. This
You're
is
welcome.
from the book club story. So it's me and then several of our nearest and dearest friends. And we're all talking about like what our days had been like. And everyone had just been running errands at 11 a.m. except for me and Hayden, who, you know, have like physical places we have to be when we work. And so I look at Hayden, who's also looking at me as like everyone else was like, yeah, and then I had lunch and then I went over here and then I responded to an email and then I did this and that. And I looked at Hayden and I go, Hayden, you and I are the only ones in this group who have jobs in the 90s sense of the word.
It's gonna really suck when I have to go back on site for my job because I'll be
That's never
back
gonna
in.
happen.
Well, we'll see if my client ever gets their act together. We don't have electricity at the plant that I'm working on. It was
Good,
supposed to have electricity almost a year ago.
Oh.
In case you're wondering how much of a nightmare permitting in Denver is. That's it. We're
Is
about to
that
get water.
Is
but
that an argument for small government, Maya? Because if it is, I won't hear it and I won't respond to it. It's from Arrested Development.
It's not an argument. It is a fact, though, that other people should know. Maybe the people that were on this project, but I don't. Who is that? Not me.
Your job is email, and I get that. Oh, this is actually one last final thing I'll say. Griffin was in town recently. And the
Yeah.
flight got like super, super delayed.
Boo.
So delayed at one point that they had to land in Scottsbluff, Nebraska to get more fuel to then come down to Denver.
Literally,
And-
what?
Yeah, so they had just circled for a really long time because it was one of those storms in town. Anyways, this is not the interesting part of the story. We're having Indian food at like midnight on 6th Street because there's
Yes.
this Indian food place that's I think really good that's open 24/7 in the city. And I was like, this, Griffin, this is
Is
what
city life.
this is what city life is
Yeah.
for you. And then Griffin and I talked about our favorite books. Oh, and then that is one. Okay, now this is for reals the last thing before I am ready to start the episode.
Start the podcast.
So, you know, we can start recording here soon. No, where is it? Did I not save it? Hey, Maya, cut this. Oh, found it. Never mind. I was say cut this part, but actually, never mind. I found it.
Poor Maya in the future just got real panicked for a second.
She heard her name.
Whoa.
Hey, hope work's going well. Okay, so at the end of book club, I pulled out, I'm not even joking, I think close to 15 books, all of the queer variety.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, if anyone's interested in like renting or borrowing any of them, like you're welcome to. And then truly and honestly, and I know who I am and I know that you guys know who I am, but I was like, that's all I was going to say. But then they were all like, oh, Grant, like, talk to us about them. Like, which ones would you
That's
recommend or
really
whatever?
cute.
And so I started to put them on a scale of from like silly little haha to serious, and you notice there's like a huge gap. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, this one's really sad, and they all die, and it's based in the 80s. So go ahead and
So
guess what
just
they
think about
die
that.
of.
Yeah.
And then all of these are just cute little rom-coms, and then there was like one in the middle. Anyway, several of our friends took books away, and I have this photo
Really
now,
cute.
and you can just appreciate.
Yeah, you sent this to me.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah, you did.
I don't know what life.
This was right before I sent you the picture of me with with my paint.
Good.
I also just love that it's under a picture of Malcolm X.
Oh yeah, I mean I have great art in my house. Okay, I'm ready to get started. Do you think you're ready to get started?
Yeah, man.
Yeah?
Sure.
Hell yeah. All right. So, Maya.
Oh God.
Maya.
I'm gonna get any question you are about to ask me wrong.
I think you'd be surprised.
Abraham Lincoln.
What are
Titanic.
What are the qualifications? It's actually so funny. One of those two topics does get briefly mentioned in today's episode.
All right, so
What are the requirements for a hot girl summer?
a hot girl summer.
Hot girl summer.
A lot of iced coffee.
Okay.
A good playlist.
Okay.
I don't want to like say any of the like body-yaddy things because that feels not on brand.
Sure. We're kind of looking for like timeless ingredients.
Timeless ingredients.
Like this summer,
A
obviously, it's
new
the Charlie
outfit.
XCX Brat summer. Okay, but
Yeah.
new outfit.
Yeah, a new like makeup. I don't know if that's like a thing that because we've been going through like the doe eyes and the brat eyes.
Sure.
I'm sure you're really caught up on this.
Yeah, none of those meant anything to me at all, but I love it. I love it.
Because last summer was Barbie summer.
Right.
This summer is Brat summer.
Right.
With Sabrina Carpenter and Chaperone
And Charlie XCX.
And Charlie
Who was
XCX.
the one that wrote the Brat album.
Sure. In my head, it's like it's a vibe.
Okay, so it's like not like a real hard checklist for you. Then,
You know.
Okay, so the person that we're going to talk about today, well,
Yeah.
some of the people that we're going to talk about today, there's kind of
A
like
tote bag. Done.
you're
And
actually a lot closer now than you were at the start. The person that we're going to talk about today, all three of the people, I think really personified what it meant to have a hot girl summer and what it meant to have a hot girl summer. First, define your youth and then define like your entire life.
fair.
We ready
Love
for
that.
this?
Yeah, hell
Excited? I'm excited. It's honestly, it's such a silly little story. I think you guys are going to enjoy today's episode, but is there going to be in an hour and a half a moment where I was like, and that, my friends, is what it's all about? No. Maybe in a couple episodes, there's a couple other
This
things.
isn't a
kind of on
Mary
the
Shelley,
black
is
burst.
what he's saying.
No. It's not even really a Sylvester Graham. It is, yeah. It's fun. It's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a good time. Let's get into it.
Hell yeah.
IDRIS. Idris.
Yeah.
Idris Gausia Welsh.
I thought you were gonna.
Idris
were, like,
Elba.
giving me like an acronym though, like WWJD, and it was like, doesn't
What would
make
John do?
it. Yeah. Yes. Have a hot girl summer.
Okay, so Idris
Elba.
Gausia.
Elba.
It's either Gausia or Galatia, but it's
How do you spell it?
Galcia.
Galcia.
Yeah,
Galcia.
Gausia.
Yeah.
Idris Gausia Welsh was born in October 1906 in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So she's Canadian.
Hell yeah.
Her parents were Margaret Jane Headley and Robert Welsh. When her mother married Herbert Hall in 1909, her name was changed to Idris Hall. Okay, so this is just so you know, for those at home keeping track. She's now had 4 names. We're not done adding
I'm
names
confused.
to her.
Yeah, already.
So
We're all just talking about one person.
we're talking
yeah?
about Idris, whose mother remarried a new guy,
Okay.
Herbert Hall.
Yes.
Okay, and so now she's Idris Hall. But this is like the second new name and the 4th actual word that she's identified with. Her name is Idris Hall. Her stepfather was a developer and a rancher in Vancouver, right? Manitoba, Canada, moved to the West Coast. And that's all great and stuff. But here's what's something super fun. In 1914, the First World War started.
Nice.
And while Americans got to be like, should we or shouldn't we? Like,
It doesn't look good.
exactly. For like 2.5
Yeah.
years, we were like, I don't know, like everyone's going, and then we were like, but like no one who's cool is there at the start.
Yeah.
You know, like we're gonna wait a little bit
Yeah,
more.
we'll have a fashionably late entry.
Right, because then the sink into the Lusitania drags America back in. Anyways, we all be knowing this. I was working with one of our students who was coming in
Yeah.
over the summer, like this last week during teacher prep. And she was talking about a moment that happened last year. And she goes, so when my class was learning about World War One, well, when my class was learning about World War One, when I was like relearning World War One, and I was like, eat 'em up, babes. And she
Nice.
goes, we're juniors. How are you just hearing about World War One for the first time? And I was like, truer words have never been said.
Oh my god, that hurt me a little. I'm not a history person, okay?
She's like, you can't apply for college if you don't know what the Treaty of Versailles is.
I mean, that's fair.
Okay. So in 1914, World War One starts, and Canada, who is like part of the British Empire, kind of like self-rule, semi-independent, they're like, we got you, babes. And so they come in. And that means Herbert Hall, he's in the army. And so he's getting shipped off to France, and he's bringing his entire family with him.
What?
Yep, which I just want you to know, little history friends, that is unusual. I think Herbert Hall was higher ranking. Do I have it in my notes?
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Transferred to the British Army and made him a lieutenant in the Durham Light Infantry. The family, Idris, her mother Margaret. Her mother's. Want to guess her mom's nickname? It's a name episode. Want to guess her mom's nickname?
Sorry, say her name. I got distracted by how cute Mo is right, for a second. Look at what a face! Oh my god! Sorry.
So her mom's name is Margaret Werner Hall. What's her nickname?
If you're asking me, I feel like it's not a usual nickname of Margaret.
It's Mickey, which
I
maybe
like
is,
that.
but I don't, It just feels like she's supposed to be in Greece, not like married to a lieutenant at the start of World War One.
Yeah. What is Margaret? Is Mickey a nickname for Margaret?
I don't know, but because you meet women named Mickey today.
Mickey,
still.
yeah, but I don't know what their name is.
Oh, what play is it? This is also something the kids were talking about today in class, where someone whose name is Margaret, her nickname is Peggy.
Oh, that is
in Shakespeare of some kind, right?
Oh, in
I
Shakespeare.
think so, or is it not? It's a play.
I think that's the princess, the Queen Elizabeth's sister. That was her. Her name was Margaret, but I think people called her Peggy. That's not hitting quite right.
I love how much we have talked about names at the start. Oh, because I have several new coworkers this year, obviously. So I've gotten to pull off one of my favorite tricks, which is, what Grant stands for, right? You know what Grant means,
Jesus.
right? And they're like, no, what? And I'm like, to give freely, dumbass.
It's a TikTok, and I'm not remaking it into another TikTok. Or maybe I will.
So if you're still listening to us, thank you. It's just been a bunch about names so far.
I didn't take my Adderall today. I'm in a weird place.
It's
I'm like,
good.
say it all 5 times.
I didn't sleep well last night either. We're both in a weird place. And
Grant
this is
came
the right
in.
story for
Yeah.
us.
He was giving a weird energy, and I was giving a weird energy. And usually, if one of us giving a weird energy, the other one's fine. And now it's like,
we can both modulate. And I don't feel like I usually give off weird energies.
no, you don't.
Too.
You're usually pretty consistent. It's usually me that's like in a weird
Right,
spot.
but that means when I do give off weird energies, it's like,
okay.
oh God, mom's mad. Everyone run
Literally.
away.
Literally.
Okay, here's what you need to know. There's this girl named Idris Hall who in 1906 was born, and 8 years later, in 1914, her stepdad gets brought into World War One, and they moved to Europe. He's a lieutenant, which is high ranking, but not so high ranking that he is not involved in the battles, right? He's like still on the front lines and stuff. And from what I can gather, the family was kept like pretty close to the front lines. Like at one point, Idris was sent to a boarding school in Belgium. And what's super crazy about that is during World War One, the German Empire like overran and occupied like 80% of Belgium. Like, it was actually, like, there was not a lot of Belgium left. And they were like, that's where we should send our daughter. So they sent her to a boarding school in, like, Belgium. She spent a little bit of time in London. She, one of her last schools was a convent school in France, which isn't necessarily a school to make her a nun. It's just a school ran by French nuns.
Oh, okay.
And then in 1917, June of 1917, her stepdad, Herbert Hall, was killed in combat at the Third Battle of... I've actually never known how to pronounce this as an American. I've always called it Ypres, Ypres, but it might be like Ypres. It's like, how would you say it in French? Ypres?
Ypres, I would say Ypres.
It's probably Ypres.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know why.
Anyways, sorry.
Don't come at me. I'm wrong. I know it.
All you really need to know is that in 1917, her father passes away. And even though there's like
father or stepfather?
I mean, I think at this point, stepfather is father.
Okay.
I don't know if her biological father passed away when she was younger, but there's no real mention of him.
Right.
It's this guy brings them to France, passes away.
Right.
So now she has her mom, a sister, herself. They're in Europe, right? They're receiving some kind of like widower's pension, and she's finishing up her school. Okay. 1917, she's 11.
Okay.
World War I ends. Want to go ahead and tell the audience who wins that one?
We do.
America coming in at the last second and taking all the credit.
Literally. The number of shirts I've seen that are like undefeated in world wars.
Back-to-back World War champs.
Shut the hell up. You better knock on some wood right now. God.
But also, it always helps to start a race 2 years ahead of everybody else who's in the race.
Yeah, literally fresh. Ridiculous.
December 7th. 1941.
December 7th, 1941.
That's a Pearl Harbor reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, but I had to say it in the transatlantic accent.
So here's what we need to know. This whole war conflict thing, this is what originally brings Idris to Europe. But so far, she had lived in Manitoba, she had lived in Vancouver, then she had lived in England, Belgium, and France during this time.
Was your answer to a hot girl summer a trip to Europe?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, would have accepted travel, specifically looking for a trip to Europe.
I tried.
Which might be why I'm a little discontented right now. I didn't get to Europe this summer.
Fair.
And I realize how privileged that statement is. But I don't have children or pets, okay? That has to come with some kind of financial upside to it.
I thought so, too.
Now you have 2 little baby beans.
Now I have 2 little baby beans and a house and a mortgage.
Welcome. Okay, so... here's what you need to know. She's never really settled in one place, right? Like kind of always moving.
It's a little transient.
Right. Yeah. Just like by nature of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Worldly already, right? Manitoba is central Canada. Nice. Good.
I always almost say Canada.
We're going to get comments.
Every time I say Canada, I almost say Canada. I don't know why.
I think I'm trying to say Canadian, but then I realize I'm not the person, it's the place, and then it's too late.
I can't figure out why I always want to say Canada.
You got to start it right
Canada.
on the approach. Like
Canada.
As American English speakers, it's like that very first vowel that if you're not right there, the whole word's going to be wrong.
I feel like it has to do with the fact that the second A is different.
Canada, Canadian.
Yeah, the second A is different though, and I don't know why I naturally want to be Canadian instead of Canada instead of Canada. Do we have any linguists in the audience?
Good. That was good. That was really good that we worked through that together.
It's been a long, month, Grant.
So the war ends. Her family moves to Paris. And did I skip over something? I did. Yep. So war ends. Family's going to move to Paris. Interwar years. Okay. So devastated by her father, she has apparently, and this is according to nuns, who I'm sure have a pretty low bar for this kind of stuff, has a, quote, restless spirit and is constantly at odds with her superiors.
Me too.
How do you solve a problem like Maria? World's first diss track. Constantly at odds with her superiors who have tried in vain to transform this giant woman. You want to guess how tall she is in 1918, 1919, 1920?
6.
Correct. She's just 6 foot tall.
Okay.
But they're like, she's a lumberjack here in France.
That's fair. She has to go up to the Scandinavian countries to fit in.
But the problem is too, with all this restless spirit, she's also independent, but also she's not a dummy. She took her schooling pretty seriously. She's like very charismatic, which I think is at least in part based off of her life so far, right?
Mm.
Like she's used to being the only girl in a room if her dad was in the military,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're constantly making friends, you either become a wallflower or everyone's your friend instantly. And I
Yeah.
think she chooses the second track. She's also, like proficient in at least 3 languages by this point because she speaks English. She needs French to get around Belgium and France. And then like obviously they're teaching like Latin and stuff at these convent schools. And so she's like bilingual, trilingual, charismatic giant.
Yeah.
And she is describing herself as a tomboy, which of course, not good at all. She's also so ready to get out of this place. Her dad, Herbert Hall, had a huge collection of books and had like not only taught her a love of like reading and literature, but also like kind of like made her aware how big the world was and to
that's
not be
good.
like settled for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, Loki, I know they sent her off to boarding school.
Oh yeah.
But it does kind of sound like they did a good job raising her.
Yeah, it does. I want to like read like papers on like studies of how like unusually tall people tend to be like raised
Yes.
different, or not raised different but turn out different, because my mom grew up in Japan obviously, but she was 5'6", 5'7" ish,
Right.
and that's huge in Japan, and she
Can't wait to go to
always
Japan then.
felt like she was massive. Like I feel tall in Japan because and also like I remember
It's that Werner side of you that helps balance you out.
I'm as tall as my mom, but like we're both like just massive in Japan. And so I know my mom talked that she felt like she was just a giant all the time.
Right.
That she had, I think she mentioned when she was in elementary school, she had a really short petite friend that they were really close, but it was always like her like, don't touch my friend.
Like the
Yeah.
shadow behind her.
And the
What did you say?
little cute girl being like, oh no, don't hurt me. Yeah.
Which is funny too, because in all animes, I feel like all characters are like 8 pounds but 6'4". So that's really funny.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
So there'll be actual photos of Idris that I'll show you later. And this is a woman who obviously at the time she's wearing heels, right? Because that's feminine.
Yeah.
Will also find herself in boots pretty regularly.
Oh yeah.
And she towers over a lot of
Love
people.
that.
Because part of me do wonder is like how height has changed over the last 120 years.
Yeah.
As like nutrition has changed and stuff. But she towers over even some of the men in her life that we will find later.
I love that.
As you should. Honestly, you're going to kind of love Idris. In 1922, when she was 16 years old, and apparently nearing the end of her studies, I guess that's all that you really needed to learn.
Okay.
She sees an advertisement in the Riviera edition of the Paris Herald, and it catches her eyes. I want because there's notes afterwards. I was going to have you read this, but instead I'll just read it.
Okay.
The advertisement reads as such. Brains, beauty, breeches. World tour offer for lucky young woman wanted to join an expedition. Asia, Africa. End of advertisement.
What?
I'd respond to that job offer right now.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? But it's beauty, it's beauty, brains, and pants.
Yeah, beauty's brains and britches.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
Right.
sign me up.
And so young 16-year-old Idris, who had lived in 5 countries at this point, was
Yeah.
bi, trilingual, was a tomboy, and was excited about the world in part because of the books that her late father had showed her.
Yeah.
Was like, well, what an opportunity this is to run away from home.
As I've been doing my whole life,
Correct.
it feels like.
Can't run away from home if you never have a home. Woo!
Hey!
And have a restless spirit.
Yeah.
So we're going to get back to Idris for a second. But before we do, I want to talk about the person who placed that advertisement in the year 1922.
Okay.
So keep in mind, she's 16, right? Born in 1916.
That's insane.
Right, exactly.
So we are talking about the Titanic at some point, right?
What year does the Titanic sink? Do you know?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know that
Good
this
job.
is.
Yep, it's 1912.
This is after Abraham Lincoln. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk. She is adorable. I want you to know
Really
that, by
cute.
the way.
Every time I announce the theme on the Instagram, like send in your stories, which I'm gonna have to do today because we're recording a listener episode tomorrow. I always post a picture of the pizza. Look at her little face. I love her
Looks up.
so much.
She really is so cute.
Oh my god, she's so sleepy. Are you so tired? Oh, you're so bedwaggled.
Okay, so let's talk about the person that placed the advertisement in the newspaper of the Paris Riviera.
And I said, but look how cute. What the fuck?
Here's the thing, she has just stopped begging for my attention, which is especially important today as I like fight for my life against these allergies.
Okay, you have seasonal allergies, right?
Yes.
Are they acting up right now?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I was just like inhaling sawdust.
No. I have taken 2 24-hour Allegras every day for like the last week. And today, for the first time, I had to take allergy pressure and pain medication.
I've been like dying, and I just have been attributing it to the move and the dust.
Are you taking hot showers?
I don't.
Take hot, steamy showers, at least initially. You can cool it off at the end because I know it's warm. And then as you're in the middle of this is a life advice now, life advice podcast. As you're in the middle of that hot, steamy shower, I need you to do a farmer sneeze. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, just
you plug a nostril and then just kind of snot rocket it out.
I should be doing that during showers.
And then, do you remember the ingredients? It was 2 ingredients today for my little dip. Do you remember it?
For your dip?
Yeah, that was what my lunch was. It was rotisserie chicken. And horseradish. Okay, run some spice through your system. Clear things out.
Baby for spice, though.
Great, so you don't need a lot of it. Then.
That's really
you just need enough to run your nose.
You're right. I'm sorry. I'm like, but I don't wanna.
Listen, do the kind of thing where you like tell a child it's guacamole, but it's actually wasabi. That should really take care of it for you right there in one bite. We can get sushi after this if you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this up real quick. She dies. No, I'm kidding. And scene. Thanks so much. Join us next time. Sorry it wasn't an hour.
Okay, goodbye. Jesus Christ.
Good. Excellent. Sorry. Listen, I want to be like, they're all probably panicked, but they're looking at the app right now.
And left,
here's the funny thing. You know how much time's left? We don't.
Could be a minute, could be an hour.
Okay, so let's talk about the person who put the advertisement in the call.
Okay.
Next paragraph. Young Idris could not resist the stirring call to adventure, and she applied for the position as secretary and driver for an ambitious around-the-world expedition, led by self-styled Captain Walter Wonderwell.
Self-styled, what?
Means not actually ever in the military.
Okay. Yeah, I would not have known that. I was like, he's wearing Versace. No, he's wearing his own clothing.
Correct. He hard launched his own nickname because he will be called Cap.
I
short
love
for
that.
Captain.
It's Walter Wonderwall.
Walter Wanderwell.
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 Anyway, here's Wanderwell.
Right. That joke is like still timeless. I want you to know.
So
Kids
good.
still laugh at it. Because do you know what's universal? Do you know what's never changing?
I wanna push you around, and I will.
Well, I meant more specific.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just looked down and I remember that the crystal was given to me because I get so locked in during the stories and I'm like filled with love again. Thank you. Young men learning how to play the guitar, learning that Wonderwall is like 3 chords,
super easy,
and then subjecting those around them to it.
Yes.
Listen,
I do that with the ukulele.
Because I refuse anymore to bully children live on air. I have stories for you when we wrap this up.
Okay,
because I'm a good teacher. Like, obviously, I'm going to share them, but not publicly. All right, so his name is Captain Walter Wanderwell.
Okay.
And he is from Poland.
Okay.
But spends a large part of his like early life in America, where he is at one point accused of being a spy. And I know this is going to shock you because so far this man sounds really trustworthy. But Walter Wonderwell isn't a Polish name where he was born.
Yeah.
His actual name is Valerian Johannes Pajacinski.
No.
And so you can see how
it's not a real name.
Wonderwell.
Yeah, Walter Wanderwell.
He basically named himself like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, he was like, what do I do? I wander a lot.
WWWD. What would Walter Wonderwell do? Lie. That's what he would do, babes. He would lie. Shocking. None of the women or a good portion of our male listeners.
That would be such a good episode title.
WWWD. at willowleftpod.com. Okay,
I love that.
here's the thing. Is he a liar? Yes, but why is he a liar? Well, because he's hot. Here's a picture.
Oh yeah, he could get away with anything.
Yeah, he absolutely
It's not even that he's like
could.
really physically. I mean, he is physically attractive, but it's more so like how he's holding himself.
Mhm.
Also, you said he's not in the military or
No.
was never in the military.
Never in the military.
Why the fuck is he wearing this outfit?
Right.
then?
So this outfit is exactly what Nigel and the Wild Thornberries would wear.
Yeah.
Which is like military adjacent, right? It's like made from the same material.
It has
roughly
the
the
belt,
same colors.
all the pockets.
Right. So what's important to keep in mind during this time is that this is, and I'm using air quotes, listeners, okay, especially if you're just audio.
Yeah.
This is during that time of like the age of great discovery, when like eccentric when eccentric kind of douche canoe, like wealthy men would
Yeah.
like spend a lot of money to go up a river that had been the cradle of a civilization for like centuries. And they'd be like, I'm the first man to see this.
To do this.
And they're like, I'm the first white man who will then tell the London Sunday Times that I did this. And there's a certain element of Walter Wonderwell, Johannes Valerian Palesinski's captain.
That's not a real name.
Like there's a certain element to this too, but he is a slightly better character than that.
Okay.
You can kind of root for him a little bit. Go ahead.
I have a thought that I listened to on a podcast that I listened to recently.
Is it our podcast? 'Cause
No.
TM to all my thoughts.
No. No. So you remember the Harry Houdini episode?
Do I?
Yeah, in the age of spiritualism.
I think about that every time I see a trumpet these days. I want you to know it ruined a certain aspect of the wind instruments for me.
Well, it's a brass instrument, but whatever.
Okay, Houdini.
A wind instrument is made out of wood.
I'd call you Sherlock, but I know distinctively Arthur Conan Doyle wouldn't agree with you.
During the time of like when spiritualism was really big, do you know what big discovery happened around the same time?
Not off the top of my head, not in the way that is framed at least.
Dinosaurs.
I didn't know we discovered oil. Kidding.
Fucking imagine. You're like, anyway, I want to talk to my dead grandma, and you open the newspaper and there's like a rendering of a real life dragon. And
Here's
you're
the
like,
thing. I as a person who grew up, now most of my family was pretty mainline Protestant,
Yeah.
right? Like pretty like conventional.
mhm.
Not everyone, especially like the further out and the deeper in you get. There's no other way I can describe that without saying specific names in relations to me.
I get it.
But a rejection of dinosaurs and a firm belief that that cardinal is my grandmother reincarnate. There's a strain of that in my family, in my biological genetic family. I think it's super impressive here that soon that like so many members in my immediate family will have college degrees.
Yeah.
When our lovely, could do no wrong grandmother
Yeah.
didn't even get a chance to go to high school. But then some of her prodigies? Well, babes, they should go back to school. And I don't mean a college level one. It's fine. They're gonna run for school board. Okay, so that's a joke.
I know.
They're already
Anyway,
on
dinosaurs.
the school board. That's not a joke. Okay. And I'm back. Cool. Found it. Okay. So, the next thing I'm going to say about Captain Walter Wonderwell, it's important to keep in mind that this is a man who it's hard to separate truth from fiction because he wrote so much about himself and built such a narrative about himself that it's like
Nestor the Chronicler.
Yeah, yes, actually, very much so. That it's like, okay, is this the actual truth, or is this just kind of like the legend you wanted to build for yourself? So,
Right.
apparently, despite living in the United States and also having come from Poland, Captain Walter Wonderwell was a former seafarer, a world-class hiker, which I didn't know that was a title we
What?
could win, but okay,
Just
and
like-
traveler who had briefly been jailed during the war for spying. Wonderwall, known to his compatriots just as Cap, had begun this expedition around the world in 1919 as an effort to promote world peace after being inspired by a meeting with the League of Nations. Okay.
It's such a classic like white man thing to do is just to like see one thing and be like, this is this is my life's mission.
So
now.
yes, and then to then decide actually I'm just going to focus on the parts that I like.
Yes.
Is also like a very much stereotypical thing. Okay, so we're gonna get back to Idris in a second, who is our main character. But to understand Idris, we need to understand Walter.
Yeah.
So Walter Wonderwell co-founded the organization called Work Around the World Educational Club with
What?
his wife Nell in 1919 in an effort to promote world peace after the war.
Okay.
So the idea around it was Walter and Nell would raise a bunch of money, and then they would travel to other countries and inspire these other people to join their organization. And then these other people would volunteer their time for free. But, and hear me out here, they would volunteer to monitor military buildup in their home countries. You would basically spy on your own country to help avoid militarism, one of the things that led to World War One.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you'd be like, hey, just so you know, like I am like a world educational group tour, world peace, we are the world volunteer. And I just wanted you to know that like Spain recently purchased like 100 new tanks, and they're being like made like outside of my hometown, and like that's a weapon of war, and to like try to get the League of Nations to like help protect peace and stuff like that. Turns out there is not a lot of money in that.
What?
And traveling, unfortunately, is like relatively an expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
And so instead, you're a little far from the mic. I'm sorry.
You're good. I appreciate
That
it.
yell came from that. Yeah, came as like a clarion call in the night.
Like a trumpet.
Maya, are you in the room with me right now? Not a trumpet. Not. Listen, if you haven't listened to our entire discography, you're not going to get to this episode. Kidding. Okay, so what Walter and Nell do realize is that they can travel to these places, take photos and videos of these places that they travel to, and then just kind of promote those videos, and that they can sell tickets to that, and that can fund their travels. And they don't even need to talk to volunteers about militarism. And so they don't.
You know what? Fair.
So Nell, his wife, Nell Miller, because Wonderwall is a fake made up name that Cap gave himself. Wonderwall was born in Seattle. Just so you know, this guy's going to have a thing for girls who lived in the Pacific Northwest for a while. But also, who doesn't have a thing for girls that live in the Pacific Northwest for a while?
What the hell?
So his wife, Nell Miller, who was born in the late 1800s, was born in Seattle, worked in New York City as a chorus girl, where I do believe that's where her and Walter met. And then they got married together in Birmingham, Alabama. None of the sources that I read connected any of those
locations.
Dots.
Cool.
I get the Seattle to New York thing. I've done that red eye once. It's a tough one, but
it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
The Birmingham, Alabama part, that's what's shocking to me.
Feels a little out of left field.
Also, they get married in 1919 and then immediately start a world tour in 1919.
I mean, that's the dream.
Is it though? They basically get married right away, and they're like, what if we become travel influencers?
Yes. Yes. I feel like that's a big strain on the relationship, seeing as Casey and I moved 10 miles away.
If that even.
And we're like at each other's throats for like 2 weeks.
It's extra funny to me because they seem to be so in love with travel that they didn't really need to do it together.
Oh,
So let's go ahead.
She needed a ring to be taken seriously by other men.
Right. Well, maybe, potentially, maybe. So, let's go ahead and just like kind of chronologically connect some dots here. Okay?
Yes.
In the year 1919, our main girl, Idris, she's still at a French convent school in France, right?
Cool.
Because she is like 13 at the time. Nell Miller and Walter Wonderwell in Birmingham, Alabama, are getting married to each other. It's 1919.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I know, let's go on a world tour. And here's a really important part. This world tour is a race, which means it's going to be separate. They immediately are like,
Okay, bye.
I don't know if I wanted to do this with you or not. It's actually okay. So it's rude to speculate on other people's marriages, but this one happened 105 years ago, so I'm going to speculate a little bit. They get married in 1919 after like a very short courtship. Both of them kind of in their like mid to late 20s at this point, Walter and Nell. And then basically within the year of them getting married to each other, they separate.
Deuces.
And so it's like, did you just like, were you married longer than you actually dated? And then you were like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't actually want this
Never
at
mind.
all? Was there like a pregnancy scare that never actually then materialized? Because, well, Nell and Walter won't have kids together.
Yeah.
At least they won't have kids during the 6 months that they're together. And then they both set off around the world in different locations.
That's wild. In my head, it's like a contractual thing that they realize that it's like mutually beneficial.
Right.
For whatever reason.
It's not.
Oh, okay. Well.
Because here's the criteria for the race, too. Whoever can travel the most miles and see the most countries wins.
That
And-
seems very ambiguous.
Right. Well,
Does a layover count?
well, especially when you realize that they don't put a time limit on it.
Oh, so they're just like goodbye
A
forever.
little bit.
That's so
Not
funny.
only are they like goodbye forever, but it's like goodbye forever. And I want you to know I will see more of the world than you will see.
Goodbye.
Right. Also, if you're like,
That's hysterical.
what's the prize? That's a great question.
They
There
did
isn't
not
one.
set-
The prize is no longer being in the other's company.
I wonder if they were like, this is the easiest way for us to explain to our relatives why we're not home or together.
Like maybe I do get a suspicion, and you'll find out later, that part of this decision was driven by Nell, who doesn't have the same kind of social freedoms that Walter does, just by nature
Right.
of being a woman in society at this time. I'm not trying to give away too much, but we're gonna get to it in a second.
Mhm.
I mean, in a second, and like who knows how long. Okay, so they're like, I know, let's be a couple, influencer couple, but never actually travel together, and we got to go everywhere, and we got to see everything, and goodbye. See, technology that was made during World War One meant traveling after World War One a lot easier. Cars are
Right.
more reliable and can go further. Gas and oil is more common across the
Mhm.
country.
It's dinosaurs.
Right, exactly. Ships can go faster. Planes exist now, right? In
Right.
addition to all of this stuff, like war also meant that photography and videography
Right.
became more portable and easier to
Mhm.
develop on the road and things like that. Because none of these war photos and stuff were being developed in like fancy black rooms in like the center of a
Right,
city. It's like
yeah.
you had to be able to do it kind of on the side of the road. And they took advantage of all of this to basically be like, we're going to go places, take footage and videos and things, and then kind of come back and then be like, look at where we went. Isn't this really cool?
That's wild.
Let me get back to my notes so I don't actually skip over anything. I did say
Very
that
good.
part.
Just checking on Bowser. He was just laying in the shade.
Yes, and so they immediately abandoned the like educational volunteer thing. They're funding their travels with their travels, which again is like the dream and also America's first TikTok influencer couple. And because while the world was more accessible than ever before, most Americans, in fact, most people, still never traveled more than a few miles from the place they were born. These films brought the world to them in a way nothing else really did. And so this is also another aspect, not to be a like history teacher for a second. And not to be like war is good, because obviously it's not, right? But like let's take, for example, you're a kid who was raised in Manitoba, Canada.
Right.
Canada. Almost said it again.
Canada.
Manitoba, Canada, and then you take a big risk and you move to Vancouver, right? Like you're living in the city, right? You're trying to make something of yourself. Then you're drafted into the army, who then
Mm-mm.
brings you not only across all of Canada to the Atlantic coast, but then ships you off to France, where you see France and probably England, and your underpants. I see London, I see France, I see Maya's under Belgium. And you have this whole experience, and if you're fortunate enough to survive, and then they ship you back through all of that, well, then you're back in Vancouver or back in your small town in Manitoba, and you're like, I've seen Paris now. Or like I've seen London.
To be
right?
fair,
Like,
I would be happy in Vancouver. They
sure.
have 24-hour bakeries there.
No, 100%. I just
No,
but
I get it.
It's
No,
that
it was like I'm home now, but I've seen so much that like,
Correct.
how do I act like this is my world when I know there's
Right.
other stuff out
and
there?
even if you can adjust back to that being your world, there's all these people that didn't have those experiences who can talk to you about it now, like at the local pub or at the church
Right.
potluck or
Yeah.
the social clubs or whatever, to where this like element, this infusion of worldliness gets brought in. But for most of these people, they have no reason to travel. They have no really ability to, it's like, who am I going to call in Vancouver to like stay at a hotel and then
Right.
right? And so there's this huge market, there's this curiosity for the world about all these places that they read, because it was truly a world war, right? So all these places around the world had a primed market of people who could not physically get there, but
Right.
were interested in to see more. And so that's how we get in 1922, 4 years into their marriage, Walter and Nell in Paris. This is the only time during their 7 years of traveling that they are even in the same city together.
Was he gay or was she a lesbian? I'm like,
no and no. I just think they were both unfaithful to each other.
they were like, we're not actually. Nah.
I can't speculate as to what happened with Nell Miller's love life. What I can tell you for a fact is that man, Walter, right? Remember who wanted it? The first thing on his list was beauty, brains, and pants. Walter.
That's fair. That's fair. I forgot that he put out that ad.
And that's why in 1922, Idris enters his picture.
Okay.
So 4 years into this race, this $1 million wager, apparently neither one of them ever had $1 million or collected $1 million or put up $1 million. Separate teams would set out. They actually departed from Atlanta, Georgia on this expedition around the world. They got married in Birmingham.
I mean, it's fair. It's just feels like a random spot when you're considering, I guess Atlanta has like the biggest airport.
Right. But so at the time, and I do think this is where the like being married element really helped out Nell, because it gave her a reason to be in all of these male spaces, but she was still this eccentric person. I mean, they're both eccentric, but it was like, Walter, he's traveling the world as men are deserving of. But this woman over here, she wears pants in the fashion of army uniforms, and we should write a front page cover of that. I'm not even joking.
I hate media.
Nell is quoted in one newspaper saying, well, of course I'm wearing army breeches. Army breeches and similar clothes are far more practical, serviceable, and comfortable.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh my God, the radical woke left. Exactly.
We need to focus on the women's physique.
Exactly. If I'm not allowed to subject my wife into wearing exactly what I want her to wear, then I don't even want to be married anymore.
Yeah. Do you ever remember the discourse that happened it's probably still happening, but like a decade ago, where people were like, women should be judged at the Olympics on their physique as well as their performance.
What?
Because they were trying to convince women to not like bulk up.
What?
They were like, that's not feminine.
What?
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. This isn't going to shock anyone. The liberating quality of queerness knows real edges to it,
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are just cool. Mask, femme, somewhere in between.
You can do whatever with your body and anything else.
This is also, if we're doing a disclaimer time, this is also a great time to say this disclaimer real quick. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Nell traveled. That's super cool. We're going to get back to Idris. She becomes very interesting. The second half of the story, I think, really takes off. But before we say anything, I want to point out Walter, Idris, and Nell all benefited from this perception at the time that the places they traveled to were exotic and eccentric, uncivilized, uncultured, barbaric, right? That they came back and they were like, look at what these people are doing, and like, look at how strange they are. And while there is some testimony that the Wonderwells and Nell were kind and didn't necessarily play up to that specific narrative, that's definitely what's driving people to these places.
Like this, yeah.
Not necessarily even to travel, but like when they would pull up into a town to like sell tickets to their screenings and stuff. Because that's what the whole business model is. We pull into, we pull into Rome and we set up in a little theater or whatever, and we sell tickets.
Show all of your travel photos.
And we're like, here's how people in Calcutta, which I don't think is called that anymore, or like how people in Cairo like live, and they're showing these like silent films, and they're like telling stories over it, right? And they're like, oh, this guy, he was our tour guide, and like here in the bazaar and in the marketplace, and like it's giving them like
That's
this.
insane.
Correct. It's this like fictionalized tale of the world accompanied with photos, and then the sales of those tickets is what funded their passage to the next thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just kind of crazy that that's something that people used to be able to do with all of their travel photos. I'm just saying that I have a lot of travel photos that I would love to show people, and if even better, if you want to pay me
Right.
for those travel photos, that's great. It also sounds like the way that Grant tells any story ever.
There is actually a lot of like a lot of identification. I like to think I don't otherize the places that we go
but
to.
you definitely are
It's always
like
a tale of adventure.
Yeah, it's always like hyperbolized just enough to be
Right.
like, don't you wish you were there?
Right. It's hyperbolized enough to be interesting enough to get you to stop chewing with your mouth open for a second. Sorry, if you're going to come for me, I'm going to say what's on my mind.
That's fair. Grant's been on some dates recently, I think.
Do not make me talk about it right now. I'm like the pendulum swinging again, and I go, what if we did Solo Girl Summer? What if we did Bowl of Soup, staring outside the window, being like, thank God a husband has not returned from war yet. Like, what if we did that
what is
for a
that,
second?
Twilight?
This is the skin of a killer, Bella. I have no idea what you're referencing.
Song. I can never remember it when I want it.
There's one more disclaimer I want to say too. So in addition to these people kind of playing up the idea that these people don't have the same values as we do, and that's what makes them so
They
eccentric.
worship other gods.
Correct.
Plural.
So in addition to that, they also benefit specifically from the fact that they largely move through territories still considered colonial holdings of European powers. And so they just basically, since they're Americans, have to stay on good terms with French and British colonial authorities. And that's what gives them access to basically like 2/3 of the world.
Cool.
Right? Like you don't need to worry about like, how am I going to navigate India or Egypt or like Indochina or like all of these places if it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to talk to like the British Imperial Office or the French Imperial Office.
Right.
And we'll have like 4 soldiers with guns and like a local guide.
Us,
right.
Yeah.
And there's like this perverse power structure that then lets them move
strange.
through these places.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to name that as well. That like
without having to like consider the cultural norms of that area.
Or like even interact with a autonomous, self-governing people who you're there to film and interact with, right? You need permission from the people who would then later buy tickets to film and to provide a narrative of your own.
Right.
So I wanted to get those 2 out of the way before we really kind of get into some of their travels, because all I've done so far has been like, their relationships are weird.
And this guy's name isn't actually his name,
Correct.
but isn't it wild?
They all have 18,000 names.
All I know is there's a guy, his wife, and then the woman that's tall and has breeches.
Idris.
Yes, and
Idris
brains.
Elba. And pants.
Yeah.
So Nell, on her tour, Nell would drive a modified Jordan motor car, which you can't purchase today because this wasn't a company that existed. It was a guy who built cars for you if you requested them.
Here, the way that I would buy a car from that man so fast.
I know, you built your own computer. Like it's like that exact same kind of thing.
It's Casey.
Right. So this automobile, which was built by independent manufacturer Edward Jordan, it was highly specialized. It included a 54-gallon fuel tank,
what?
a 5-gallon oil tank, and a 5-gallon water reserve, which was super important because they regularly crossed deserts. And the car had like really exchangeable wheels and like axes, which like most easily they could be fixed really easily.
This feels like an actually usable version of the Resvani Vengeance that I told you about a couple weeks ago.
The Resvani Vengeance. Oh yeah. But that one couldn't also be modified to ride on railroad lines. Which these could.
Yeah.
So
that's actually really cool.
Yes, and explains why they were able to like travel so many places. You would just basically get on like the railroad and then you would just
turn it
putter on the railroad. Yes, exactly.
That's wild.
So pretty quick into the race around the world, and perhaps the whole reason why they split up. Walter and Idris end up in Paris in 1920. Briefly, that's where Walter places the ad. That's where Idris comes in. We are now merging lines back together. Nell Wonderwell would later note to a newspaper, quote, "Too many women caused our marriage to go on the rocks." So like, I don't think he was ever faithful to her.
Okay.
Ever. She has Nell Miller, well, because that's how I'm going to refer to her again, is going to have some banger quotes at the end of this.
I already love her.
As you should. And do you know who else also loved her briefly? Walter Wonderwell. I
thought you were going to say Idris, and I was like, tell me everything.
It's a love triangle. No, it's interesting. It's not that kind of interesting, unfortunately.
But what if?
So Idris, 16, marries Walter, who's like 10 years older than her, in 1925.
So they Nell and Walter officially divorce.
I think so, or
Okay.
separate, or they were just like, we're no longer married, and there was no paperwork because like what courthouse are you gonna file that with?
That's
you know?
true. Wait, so when did Idris and Walter officially marry?
So Idris and Walter start traveling together in 1922.
Okay.
And they get married in 1925 when Idris is 19 and he's in his 30s.
So the ad he put out, was that like a dating ad, or was that just like an ad for like companion air quotes?
A great question, not only because it proves how much you've been following the story, good, but
Thank
also
you.
because you're at the exact point of that in the
Excellent.
notes. Idris comes on technically as like the secretary for this trip.
Yeah.
She's going to help manage some of the money, organize
That's why
some
you
of the
need a
bookings and
woman's
stuff.
hand
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
that,
I
but
mean,
the woman has to wear pants.
I still rarely do any of the handwriting in this podcast. But it's like, no one on any of these expeditions have just one role. And so she quickly becomes like translator because she speaks so many languages.
Oh, okay.
And also she like is a pretty quick learner when it comes to like film and photography. So she starts to like take a bunch of these photos. And then because Walter doesn't have Nell, she then becomes like the feminine face of this expedition. And she very quickly starts to go from behind the camera to in front of it. But Idris Galatia Welsh Hall isn't a name meant for the movies. And so she's going to adopt the last name Wanderwell.
Okay.
And she's not going to be Idris Wanderwell. She's going to be a different name. Do you want to guess what her stage name, first name's going to be?
From Idris?
Yes.
I feel like she's gonna go some alliteration. I don't know.
Kind of.
Willow.
Aloha.
No. That's so messed up on so many levels.
I want you to know that I was on at like 2:00.
Aloha?
Hi, my name's Aloha Wonderwall.
Hawaiians are like, get out.
Correct. Also, because I actually don't really have any evidence that she was ever in Hawaii. Or Walter, for that matter. I know. Here's the thing. I was on.
Who picked the fucking name then?
That actually, I think she did, but it never said why. And I was even on her like own biographical website.
Yeah,
the kind
and
of
it didn't say why.
Didn't see it at least. If it did, it was buried. It was not top of the line.
Did you find it in like a weird racist baby book?
No, I found it on a different Wikipedia page for something else entirely after I'd finished watching a movie. And you're like, oh, well, that had me curious about something, and I'm reading.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the paragraph, tangentially related to everything else that I was reading, there was the name Aloha Wonderwell, like hyperlinked blue. And I was like, well, what is that? And now we're here. I'm telling you this story. So she becomes Aloha Wonderwell.
I was on her side.
Charismatic and fluent in apparently at least 4 languages.
No.
Don't worry, I didn't list them.
She's learned another one?
She quickly finds her place. She gets married in 1925 when she's only 19. In addition to the expedition's on-screen narrator, so when they were like showing the pictures, she'd be like,
she's
and
talking.
Then we traveled through the dense
She is
jungle
the like
of...
Siri voice on TikTok.
Who's that British guy? David Attenborough.
Yes.
The mighty 5'8" man who I fell in love with wanders into the jungle.
We referenced him so many times that whatever he does in the future, I feel like we now owe him.
I want to be part of that
advertisements.
Wikipedia page.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so here are some of the things that she created. So one of their first and one of like the most renowned videos that the Wonderwells, which now means Aloha and Walter, put together was with car and camera around the world, 1919 to 1929. The Last of the Bororos, 1930 to 1931. And River of Death, 1934. Despite Walter's...
What?
So despite Walter's serial infidelity and the couple's divorce, Nell stuck to the race around the world.
Hell yeah.
She
was like, we're divorced, but I'm still gonna beat your ass.
Correct. And I like they were divorced, but I don't know if it was like named as divorced. And I think she did kind of claim to be married a little bit as part of... As like part of like this cover of like, it's okay that I'm around the world. I'm married, folks. He's just in a different continent doing the same thing I'm doing. Don't know why we couldn't do it together, folks. Also, don't ask me what hello and goodbye means in Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Because it means mistress. So by 1926, she was competing against Walter and his new wife, Aloha, to see who would reach the furthest point. And then this is where I was kind of on the fence.
Wait, he's competing also with Aloha?
So Aloha and Walter are traveling together.
Okay, and
Nell's
Nell is competing with the two of them. Okay.
This is what really sealed it for like, oh, I gotta do this article. In 1926, she gave an interview with the Omaha World Herald. And this is what we have.
They were like, we saw Nebraska.
Correct. Got it. I think they're just trying to rack up miles.
Yeah.
Here's how the World Herald described her. Quote, head of a party on the last lap of a round-the-world tour, which has been in progress for the last 7 years. Nell did not mention if her decision to continue the contest was rooted in her sense of adventure or out of a desire to beat her ex-husband and his new fiancé. But at least publicly, she showed no signs of animosity.
Okay, sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties.
Hello.
We're back, though.
Where was I? Oh, yes. Okay. So publicly, she showed no animosity towards her ex-husband.
Okay.
It also didn't mention her as a divorcee or as this guy as her ex-husband. So again, don't know if she's doing it to like preserve her own ability to do this, or if she truly is just kind of like, that's not gonna get me any money if I'm like this.
It's not worth it.
And, right, exactly. Yeah. She's like, I have a narrative that I'm this adventurous woman around the world who's totally safe otherwise. Rather, she cited her marriage to him as sparking a spirit of exploration and told reporters she insisted upon finishing the race. Oh, even after the divorce. Haha, forgot that part of the race. The Herald delivered that, quote, only once have their paths crossed when they visited Paris in 1922 for a brief time. And then again, they resumed their travels, each making their way by lectures and travel logs, which is like the videos and stuff.
Yeah.
And the sale of pictures and stories of their travels to news bureaus and syndicates. By 1924, Nell's team had been to every state in the U.S., had ventured to Canada, Holland, New Zealand, South America, Cuba, China, Japan, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, and the Philippines and Africa.
See, this is my dream job. Not like I wish I could do this today. Like right. In this time period, I wish I could do it then, obviously as a white man. But
it's nice.
Yeah. Because they're basically travel influencers, essentially, right? But travel influencers today have to be like, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to book this kind of flight going to Greece. You're going to book this kind of hotel. You're going to wear these kinds of clothes. You're going to go to this restaurant. You're going to avoid these tourist traps. But these people literally just have to like have the most privileged, like don't have to worry about being culturally correct. Not saying that that's right or anything, but you don't have to then like.
No, they can literally lie.
Yeah, they can literally
There's
just
no way
say,
to fact check
exactly.
What they say.
You can say whatever, and no one on the internet is going to be like, well, actually, that's a slur or anything like that. Not that I want to be an ass, but like you don't have to worry about that kind of backlash.
You basically get all the benefits without any of the potential consequences.
Yes.
You're going to be even more reckless.
And your job is not giving travel tips. It's literally just telling people about your travels.
And there's also like this ethics component to it where it's like the people you're talking to aren't going to follow in your footsteps because today's travel vloggers also need to talk about like sustainable tourism and stuff like
and
that,
they can't...
which is important, but like that's just another element you got to add. And they're like, so there I was in the British Imperial office smoking some tobacco indoors around babies. And there's nothing, anything. They can lie about basically whatever they want. But an element that we would absolutely recognize today is at least for Walter and Aloha, they would be like, and we were able to do all of this thanks to our trusty Ford Motor Company vehicle. Like they were also promoters.
They still have to do like ads,
the
essentially.
Sponsorship and stuff, right? Because a big thing that we'll talk about later is that Aloha Wanderwell becomes the quote first woman to travel around the world via car. We're gonna get to more on that in a second.
Amazing.
So, one last thing about Nell's adventures before she's gonna kind of dip into the backstory for a little bit as we'll focus on Aloha and Walter. So, along Nell's journey, 3 of her teammates married and chose to settle down with people they met along their travels. In fact, Nell's touring group was dubbed the Honeymoon Express. Throughout the never-ending
Hell
race,
yeah.
the 3 sole members who actually managed to do the entire race
Yeah.
were basically Nell, Walter, and Aloha. That like
I
everyone else
love
like
that. Like,
came and went.
I love that.
That's a nightmare scenario for me. Granted, I have fallen in love with someone in Greece and Italy and Ireland. I do not remember their names and only vaguely remember their faces.
You remember the
so I get
feeling.
it. Oh, yeah, which
Yeah.
is basically like hot and desirable in a foreign country. You can't beat that, baby. Like,
Yeah.
put the drugs down. Experience that. You can be whoever you want. You can still basically lie. You just have to also then say you don't have Instagram.
Put the drugs down. Experience that.
There was actually nothing wrong with what I just said.
No,
it was
yeah.
just shocking.
It was just
It's
shocking.
a family-friendly message.
It is. Obviously. Sometimes my toxic trait is that I will follow anyone on Instagram after meeting them for 30 seconds. And then the issue is that every once in a while a little meta algorithm will just be like, remember this person? Here's what's going on in their life right now. And I'm like, who the hell
Who are
is
you?
Is this a sponsored ad? Like, who are? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I met you in a hostel
Right.
for a single
We
very
always
weird
have
night in Paris.
one shared tagged photo together.
Yes.
100%.
Maybe.
So what I loved about that was like literally could not be me. Like Nell needed me on that travel. I would never have settled down.
Right.
So let's chat about what's going on. The journey itself was filled with firsts. And when Aloha and Nell was revolutionary at the time. It should be noted, Imperial, okay, that's where I put the disclaimer for the Imperial stuff. Aloha Wonderwell became the first woman to drive around the world, beginning and
bananas.
ending her journey in Nice, France, between December 29th, 1922 and January 1927. In a Model T Ford, Wonderwell, Aloha, made the journey as a driver, translator, and filmmaker for the Wonderwell expeditions. In fact, I'm going to show you some of the footage in a little bit. It's like very clear that after a while she's the star.
Yeah.
And Walter's like, yeah, check out the broad I brought. Da, 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 da. You know, everyone's like, you're in the shot. If we could kind of get you
if you could
out
actually
of the way.
move.
Right,
a
we have
little
some
bit.
local children here to meet Aloha.
Yeah.
Not even joking, this footage.
Her head is only just peeking over yours.
Correct, exactly. She actually like towers over Walter. So they did the round the world with Cap. She's the first person. Right, okay. So she's the first woman to drive around the world, which is a distinction because a different woman a couple years earlier had been the first woman to circumnavigate the world in a car. But that
How?
woman didn't drive it. She has a chauffeur, and she sat like in the back.
Was it the same chauffeur all around?
I think so.
So that's the first person to circumnavigate.
I actually think many people had kind of done this first. We're talking about the first woman to do this kind of stuff.
Oh, so she was the first woman to just like be there while it happened.
Right, that was Harriet.
Yeah.
Who we're going to talk about in a second.
Okay.
Aloha was the first woman
person
to like drive it herself.
sit in the car
Right.
and drive it.
And in India, which at the time was the British colony of
Yeah.
India, she met the first people to fly around the world. They like both landed in the same
That's
city.
wild.
And they're like, what a great photo opportunity. You know, I'm sure there was like some coordination involved.
Oh, yeah.
But everyone was crossing the world on different vehicles at the time, right? First
Yeah.
person to do it with sled dogs. First person
Yeah.
to do it with 2 left feet, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I need to talk about the odd Harriet White Fisher, the first woman to circumnavigate the world.
The odd Harriet White Fisher?
I am calling her odd to try to be kind. Harriet White Fisher is her name.
Okay.
This woman was wild. She inherited an iron and steel company when her husband died in 1903. In 1906, Harriet White Fisher's wealth was estimated to be $2 million,
Wow.
which is roughly $65 million today.
Holy hell.
A couple years later, she underbid all of her fellow competitors and won a super lucrative contract to help design the Panama Canal, which doubled her wealth.
How did she help them design it?
So what her steel company helped produce
Oh, okay.
like the machinery that helped dig some of the stuff.
Okay,
So
I was picturing like architectural drawings that she was
Nope.
like, yeah, that looks good.
She was just basically like, yeah, see, we could make $2 off
Yeah.
of every machine. And like they were like, that's the
Okay.
contract. And then
Well, that's
her
it's still
machines
really
helped.
impressive for her to have that like business
Yes.
know-how.
And then she just had like all of this money.
Yeah.
Almost doubled her wealth. Initial reports prior to her leaving said Harriet White Fisher was going to take off in a 4-seat car that was built in Bridgeport, Connecticut, had a 40 horsepower engine with no special equipment. Her companions were Harold Fisher Brooks, a relative, a chef named Albert, and an unnamed maid. So it's a 4-person vehicle, and she filled them seats, baby.
Yeah.
She's like, there's me, a man who can speak on my behalf, a chef because I will not eat the local cuisine, and a maid who we're not even going to name. In
If you
addition,
can make some mac and cheese, I'll hire him.
well, that's not the only thing she has to cook, babe. Because in addition to the humans on this, she also traveled with a pet monkey, a bull terrier, and a pug.
Where?
I don't know.
Just
I
in
do not.
laps? That poor chef was like, give me the monkey, I guess.
I think I can hang out like
Yeah.
here, the lease in the way. So it's a pretty big crew.
Yeah.
They leave like New England, sail to London. She like drives her car to her villa there, and then she gets back to the coast, takes a ferry to France, drives down to Lake Como in Switzerland,
Yeah.
a location of surprisingly many of our stories.
Yeah.
And then from there, she continues to travel through Egypt, India, and Japan back to the United States. A Bon Voyage party was announced in July 1909 at the Automotive Club of America. The travelers set off on July 19th, and it took them like 4 months to get to Lake Como.
Wow.
So that's November of 1909. And then they announced that they were back in San Francisco in August 1910. She drove
Wow.
around the world basically in like a year.
I mean, fair.
Sure, but part of me is like,
I
did you
guess.
drive around the world, or were you just in a car at various cities?
That's
Doesn't-
what it feels like.
right.
It doesn't feel like, you're not actually driving around the world because you can't
Right.
physically.
There's a lot of ferries.
Yeah, there's a lot of seafaring
Right.
that you'll need to do.
Like legitimately the longest distance she might have driven was from the coast of like northern France to like Italy to get on a boat. Because then it's like boat
And
to
that's
Egypt
like-
and then drove around Egypt for a little bit, but then boat again to like India, drive around, but then like boat again to Japan, and then drive around and then boat again back to San Francisco. And then I do think they drive across to America. Done that. That's actually
is-
super newsworthy. It's cool if people do that.
Okay.
I roll.
I was on board with him until he kept going. So
Then she returns to America, and then this is the last thing. There's 2 last details we ever hear about Harriet White Fisher. She married again on April 27th, 1912, to Salvano Alfredo Andrew, who was an officer with the Argentinian Navy.
I
They-
too would fall in love with an Argentinian.
Correct. They got married in Manhattan, and the ceremony was described as quiet because the
Aw.
groom's brother, Egdares, died on the Titanic a few days earlier. Sorry, only funny in Maya's reaction. Obviously, death is sad.
What?
But yeah, that's how the Titanic comes back into the story. The first woman to circumnavigate around the world.
Got married 2 days later to the
she-
brother of someone who died
Died
on the Titanic.
Yes.
That's such a like. So anyway, my brother's second cousin's first wife's daughter.
So yes, but also even more messed up. Think about how many boats Harriet White Fisher was on in her journey.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
that's-
one. And then the extra irony of his brother being in the Argentinian Navy.
Yeah.
Not the guy you wanted on the boat, apparently.
No, that's
Last thing you need to
That's
know about
wild.
Harriet White Fisher. Harriet White Fisher oftentimes spoke against women's right to vote.
Oh.
She was an anti-suffragist.
what does that even mean? Like how? Like what a
I truly don't know.
what a pick me. Honestly, like I need someone to drive me around the world. Also, God forbid I eat anything from the local cuisine, so I'll
I
bring
have to
my
clean
own chef.
up after myself.
Yeah, and also I can't go anywhere without my bull terrier or my monkey or whatever
Right.
the other animal was. I think another dog.
And for her, all of this was happening pre-World World War One, even, right? It's all happening before 1914. She was
how
a
dare
wild
she
life.
get married
I
again?
know. Yeah, to have that right. Granted, I mean, she was a widower, but still.
Also, you're a suffragette and you have a lot of independent wealth.
Right. So by 1907, Aloha Wonderwell was the first woman to actually drive the vehicle around the world,
Yeah.
and seems to have driven way more across way more places. In fact, there are some photos. I didn't have enough time for the entire collection, but there's some
Yeah.
photos where you can just tell, like, there's two cars in the middle of like grasslands, and it's like, okay, you were like, you left
You
the
actually
city,
are in
you
the
were like
middle of
out
nowhere,
there
yeah.
for a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And they're like clearly working on it and stuff. Back to Aloha and Walter. By 1932, Aloha and Walter returned to Southern California for a little bit of a respite. The couple had become estranged.
Wow.
Shocking.
Yeah, crazy how that happens.
And Aloha retreated to her home in Los Angeles, where she worked on editing footage from their latest expedition.
Me too, Aloha. Me too.
That actually, there's like a
Yeah.
lot in
Yeah,
this next
that's
two
me.
paragraphs.
Yeah.
that is-
For the last several days. That's all I've been doing.
While Walter assembled a crew of paid amateur adventurers to accompany them on their next trip, which would be a sea voyage on their yacht/schooner, the Karma, Carma.
Why you gotta do that? Why you gotta do that?
He's like, you can, like,
It's like naming my child Michaela and it's like Leigh in the middle.
Even better, he's like, fine, I'll give you our gorgeous house in LA, but I want to live on a boat with all of my dudes.
And I'm gonna call it Karma, but
Right.
with a C. Because I'm unique.
You're going to love this next part.
Goddamn.
While Aloha was in LA, Walter Wonderwell was living aboard his yacht with the couple's two children as it was docked in Long Beach, California on the evening of December 5th, 1932.
Oh.
Several of the Karma's crewmates were approached by a man in gray who asked where they could find the captain. After pointing him to the captain's quarters, they heard two men speaking for several minutes before a single gunshot rang out. Rushing to his stateroom, the crew found Walter dead of a single shot in the back. The mysterious stranger gone without a trace. I'm going to pause for hilarious. I am going to pause for a second.
If you're on the audio, you don't know what just happened, but the camera just died of heat
Cut out.
stroke again.
Cut out as soon as I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to pause.
Yeah, hold on.
The killer disappears without a trace.
I'm so excited.
And I had just said, I'm going to pause for a second because I want you to remind the listener what the theme of this week's episode is.
Lover Scorned.
Interesting. And has just been
I
a
hated the way you
travel
just
blog.
bit your lip.
He's single. I'm going to stop making that sound. It's
Yep,
coming
thanks.
across really clear in these microphones.
Really clear.
Okay, so newspaper headlines from across the country trace details of the quote-unquote extensive police investigation that followed. Suspects included jilted husbands, jilted boyfriends, many of Walter's actual mistresses, foreign agents, and even his wife, Aloha,
Wow.
who had taken advantage of the constant publicity to promote their latest film, River of Death.
You know what? I too might have killed him.
Yeah. Ironically, I think River of Death is the film they created of when Aloha flew a seaplane into the Amazon jungle and landed regularly on the Amazon River. And she did this in part to try to find a British explorer and his son who had gone missing in the Amazon.
Wow.
And it was during that time that her plane didn't take off again, and she got caught for 6 weeks in the Amazon Jungle River Basin and was the first Westerner to interact with a group of people known as the Boros, Borrors, and captured film of them.
That's actually kind of insane.
Yeah, and also just like a weird little side tangent to the
Yeah.
life of Aloha Wonderwall, which again, not her actual name.
I just saw a TikTok like a couple nights ago. I don't think I sent it to you. It was this guy who's camping in the Amazon forest
Okay.
right now, I think, or was, but he made this video because he was like, for all of the times that all of you are like jealous of what I'm doing and like my job. I don't know what he did. I didn't look into it. But he was like, there are nights like these, and you can tell it's at night. He's like in his like camp in his tent, and he's like, there are leafcutter ants cutting their way through my tent.
Oh.
And he like can't do anything about it. So he's like, the only thing I can do is try and get as much sleep as I can. But the leafcutter ants have cut big enough holes into my tent now that anything can get in.
Right.
And so he's like, it's a voiceover kind of while he's like showing the clips of like that night that he's trying to like sleep through. And he's like, I wake up about every 30 seconds, like trying to like swat something off of me. And then the very last clip he shows is just like a tarantula on his pillow. You could tell he like just like woke up and just saw this tarantula and just like turned on his camera. And he's like, see,
here it is.
Yeah. Like,
and I know they're not actually dangerous to humans, but still absolutely not.
That would drive me insane. Okay. Also, this is a side story. I just repotted a bunch of my plants because a bunch of them were like really not doing well. And I wanted to repot them before I brought them over. And one of them is a spider plant. And I've never really understood why they're called spider plants. And I get it. They're like, the like leaves are kind of like spidery legs, and the way that they like produce their like the things that you can cut off and replant look kind of like spiders. No. Their roots look like tarantula legs.
Oh.
I was so lucky I didn't realize this until I was almost done repotting it, because the way my body was like, you can't touch that anymore, because the roots are really thick, and then they have like really distinct like joints in them, and they're like anyway. Oof. So if you need to repot a spider plant, try not to think about it.
Interesting. There was no natural way for me to include it into the story that I'm telling you right now, but we have a lot of Aloha Wonderwall's diary entries and other letters to her family and stuff, who she seemed to keep in touch with. And while in France, I think in northern France, they got put up in this home that was, she guessed in the diary, as old as the medieval ages, and that they were being eaten alive by thirsty bed bugs.
No.
And she ended the diary entry with wildly unfair. I was like, what a way to summarize that.
What did she
evening.
do? Did she sign it off as like Aloha with a little picture of like a hibiscus flower that she drew? Like,
could you
what?
like the emoji? Yeah. Just right then and
That's
there.
That's how I'm picturing it. I can't.
Actually, Aloha Wonderwall was the one to say, you're walking along the beach with Jesus, and you look behind you, and there's only one step by his footsteps, because he was carrying you the whole time. That quote alone, which might have caused me to lose my religion right there. I was like, I can't be associated with this anymore.
Yeah, I can't handle that.
Okay, so Aloha's like, I can't believe my husband's dead. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts, buy tickets to next summer's River of Death.
River of Death? Wow.
Because she didn't go to the Amazon basin with Walter.
Yeah, it was like a mission for her, right?
But it happens before Walter's dead. So they really are like estranged by that point. So following Walter's murder, the Oakland Tribune tracks down his ex-wife Nell, who is living in San Francisco. She suggested that Walter may have been targeted by one or husband or many husbands or boyfriends of his many affairs, or someone else who he had swindled in a business deal. Here's a Nell Muller quote on Walter Wonderdale. Whatever.
Wonderwell.
I'm Doug Diggadome.
Dub Diggadome, Dibbadome.
Quote, he had a preemptory, P-E-R-E-M-P-T-O-R-I. Preemptory?
I couldn't tell you.
He had an inclination, arrogant way of dismissing someone by just turning on his heel and walking away.
Yeah, that's a good way to get shot in the back.
Literally, her next line is, maybe he did it once too often.
It's giving the wife of that prime minister in Australia.
Oh, Zora?
Yeah.
Yes.
Zara. Yeah. Zara Holt.
As the crime reporter teased out the clues into what might have happened to Walter, the former Mrs. Wonderwall noted that, quote, he could be an Eric von Stroheim. Such a good reference at the time. He could be a real Eric von Stroheim of the screen. Cool, calculating, arrogant, supremely egotistical. And
Classic.
he could, when he wanted to, be charming, gentle, chivalrous. Nell went on further to say, Cap Wonderwall wouldn't be true to any one woman. He was the eternal lover, overlooking nothing. An actress here, a stenographer there, a shop girl maybe, geishas, choir singers, dowagers, from the Suez to the Straits and back again. Everything in skirts had a fascination for the romantic captain. Okay, replace skirts with I don't know what, running
Breeches,
shorts.
yeah.
And that's how I want to be remembered as a little bit. I'm not married. I think it's totally okay. But I also
Anything in running shorts would be fascinating.
like I know she's reading him, but
Yeah.
she also is he's like he loved geishas, he loved lowly shop girls
Yeah.
from the Suez to the Straits. He loved women of every country, you know, which isn't to say that he couldn't also be racist,
Yes.
right? One can love a person of a different race or ethnicity presentation
While
and still
still
be
being, like,
hyper racist
yes,
towards
yeah.
them. But this was a man who sought out to really experience
He
the
just
world.
liked beauty.
He has a very fascination with classical music. There's many interesting things about him.
I just have the worst impression of this man,
I do
and
too.
like in
Well-
my head, he'll be like, "Oh, but you look so much better without makeup," and he'll say that to a geisha,
Right.
and it's like
And he's short too, so you
Oh,
know
God.
already he's like looking up during
with
all of it.
Aloha,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
he's looking up during all of it.
There's this line from when Tom Hanks was on the SNL and he was this like white redneck on
Yeah.
Black Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And the question was, what can a thin woman do for you? And Tom Hanks' character goes, not a damn thing. And that's how I feel about short men sometimes. That was a joke, although a lot of you get it. That was a joke.
He's gonna regret that once Mo starts barking.
Sorry, your tall husband was in the room for 10 seconds.
Yeah. Mo's gonna be upset that door's closed.
If Nell refused to acknowledge any animosity between her and her ex-husband after their divorce, she had no problems following his death. Again declaring just banger after banger
Yeah.
to local newspapers.
Love
He's
that.
dead, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
He's like fully dead. And she's like, and another thing.
He's been dead to me for years.
Correct. Quote, my life with him was one of constant problems. Getting him out of scrapes, leaving town in the middle of the night so I wouldn't have to testify against him. There were innumerable seduction charges. And he was...
Seduction charges?
Right,
Was
'cause-
that a thing?
Yeah, this is at the time where like sex outside of marriage is like
Is illegal,
super
yeah.
illegal,
Okay.
especially if you're the one that's like, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Sir, I'm married. I don't know what you think this skirt was trying to say to you, other than the fact that in this era, women aren't allowed to wear breeches. It all
They
comes
lift
together.
up their skirt and they're like, "Do you like me now?"
Exactly.
With the breeches on underneath.
Sorry, let me say it in the way I promised I wouldn't
Yeah,
at the top of the
yeah,
episode.
yeah.
And so it's like, if we can take into context all in which they lived and that came before them, we can understand why the breeches was such an important part of all of this.
Are you
Stay
done?
with us. Numerous seduction charges, and he was just slick enough to talk himself out of them.
I love that.
Accused killer, and you know how it's an accused killer because he has 3 names. Accused killer,
That's so
William
fucked up.
James Guy. That's like they always get the full name. Was a 24-year-old soldier of fortune. So basically like a mercenary.
Yeah.
Who Walter had previously accused of attempted mutiny on one of their voyages
What?
and just left him in Panama.
Left him in Panama?
Like they were on the Karma, right?
Yeah.
The yacht. So he knew exactly what it looked like. And Walter Wonderdale was like, you are trying to overthrow me. And as soon as I get this other woman out of my bed, there's going to be serious issues. And then they just left this guy, William James Guy. Get it? This guy. And they just left William James Guy in Panama. And they were like, so long, loser. In exchange for not taking your life, I'm going to leave you in this country with no way of getting back
I
to the
want
United
someone
States.
to count in this episode how many times Grant has not said the word Wanderwell. 'Cause you just said
Walterdale.
Wonderdale.
Listen, I have been calling her Aloha, even though that's very much not her name. And
Yes.
it's probably insensitive because that is her chosen and presented name.
Yep.
And like we gotta respect how people refer to themselves. I do not have that same kind of reservation with Cap. Okay, so apparently the story went that William James Guy followed Wanderwell, if we're gonna be sticklers about it.
You said Wonderdale, my dude.
And did we lose anybody? Did anybody back up? 15
You lost
seconds?
me.
You lost me because there in an opening I saw a chance to be mean.
True.
So apparently, Guy followed Wonderwell to Long Beach to confront him over unpaid wages, because he was signed up for the voyage and got left in Panama.
Yeah, I mean, fair.
Unpaid wages for his service. With the suspect under arrest and a motive in hand, police turned the case over to the prosecution for trial, where a young Kamala Harris. No, I'm kidding.
Young Joe Biden.
Yeah,
you
I know,
mean, yeah.
that's so true. That actually is true. At the last moment, Mr. Williams provided a rock-solid alibi, and the case was dismissed.
Oh.
And Walter's murderer was never held to account. They were like
never, like to this day, never?
correct. It's actually
Holy
a cold
shit.
case.
Oh my God.
The problem is his wife is so famous that it's actually kind of hard to find up
Any-
cold case stuff
right.
about him.
Because you just pull up information about
Right.
his
Anytime you type in Captain Walter Wonderwall,
it pulls up.
Wonderwell. It's like, did you mean his interesting wife Aloha or his mad ex-wife Nell?
Which honestly, yeah, I love how history kind of rewrites itself sometimes.
Right. And here's where, again, we kind of get a chance to cheer for Aloha.
Yeah.
So Aloha had gotten married at 19 to a man she had met at 16,
Yeah.
who was, I think, roughly at least 10 years older than her.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Wasn't she 19?
19 when she got married.
Okay.
But
Okay.
16 when she met him for the first
Right.
time. She's like, God, that sucks. And I'm so busy promoting our movie, River of Death, and I have these two
And also,
beautiful
I
children.
just didn't talk to you anyways when you died.
And
so-
also, there's actually this kind of crazy huge payout now from your life insurance.
yeah.
And all those little contracts you have with all your little sailor boys, well, they're
Now they come
null
to-
now
yeah.
because the, contractual agent is gone. And I just inherited a yacht. So Aloha remarries within the year to a
I
man
love that.
8 years younger than her, who is a former Wyoming rancher, but they meet in New Orleans.
What?
I know. Talk about a
Of
river
all
of
the
death.
traveling they're doing, the amount of people that they meet and encounters they have in the U.S. is
Yes.
kind of crazy.
And I kind of love that she's like, okay, well, I'm just going to get myself a pretty young thing. In
it.
1933, she married Walter Baker.
Another Walter, but biological, government name Walter.
Oh, also, maybe she had known Walter before because
I don't
he did
doubt it.
work with the Work Around the World Education Club as a cameraman. And
she had an affair with the cameraman. I love it. Allegedly.
And then they would travel for a couple more years until
Yeah.
the start of World War II meant that they had to stop traveling the world.
Yeah.
And then in 1947, the couple would retire to Newport Beach.
Wow.
That's in 1947, where they would basically spend the rest of their life together. They both lived into the 90s.
What?
Yes. They were married for 60 years, married into the 90s. And Aloha
Wow.
preserved a lot of her film and photography because she had a lot of original footage
Yeah.
from a lot of these places that they went to. And as a pioneering woman, as a producer and narrator for
so
this stuff,
cool.
as a mother, first person to drive around the world.
Did she ever not go by Aloha?
Nope. I think she
Dang.
stayed as Aloha the entire time.
It's rough.
Yep. Aloha chronicled her life in 1939 in a memoir called A Call to Adventure and carefully curated years of field notes, motion picture footage, artifacts, and photographs that she donated to various museums and historical societies, including the Smithsonian.
It does feel like a little bit more racist and problematic version of the story Up.
Walter Baker, although in her credit, I don't think she ever actually killed anybody.
I mean,
Which I think is maybe more than what Walter could say.
That's
Sorry,
fair.
the first Walter, not
yeah,
the second
yeah,
Walter.
yeah. I figured.
Walter Baker died in 1995 after 60 years of marriage
Wow.
to Aloha. Aloha Wonderwell, or Aloha Baker, passed away the next year, 1996, at the age of 89.
Wow.
Nell Miller Wonderwall's fate remains unknown. Basically, after giving a bunch of interviews following
She just
her
kinda
ex-husband's death in
Disappeared
1932.
into a life of normalcy.
Correct, including probably getting married,
Yeah.
I think, around
Yeah.
that time as well, and so her last name changes.
Yeah.
I have two things I want to show you. First, this is a map from... Excuse me.
Oh, good.
This is a map from a part of Call to Adventure. So this is a map of several of Aloha's travels. You'll notice it includes the U.S. territory of Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the second thing I have to show you is some of her original footage.
What? That's crazy.
And so let me put the hyperlink in here. There we go. So this comes from her own collection, which has then been preserved by the like Motion Pictures Association of America as part of their museum. You only really need to watch like the first minute.
Okay.
Yeah, so this comes from their movie With Car and Camera Around the World, which was published in 1929, but much of this footage comes from the 1920s to like 1929.
Outtakes from With a Car and a Camera in the World. Damn, this is insane.
It's always kind of crazy to me that like that's what the world looked like.
It is.
And that they're all wearing like that many layers of clothing and there's no air conditioning.
Stunning.
Yes. And giant.
And tall.
Compared to all the other now nourished men around her.
Yeah. Oh, she looks so cool.
There's a video at one point towards the second half of this, which I'm not going to show you because I am terrified of snakes. But she is sitting next to the reflecting pool in front of the Taj Mahal. And there is a young boy holding two snakes out of a basket. And he's like playing the flute. They are not dancing, but they're not attacking.
It is.
But it's snakes on a camera.
That is crazy.
I'm reassured by the fact that because it's from 1922, those snakes are dead.
You're like, they can't hurt me now.
Right.
This is crazy. Can I just like scrub through it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do whatever you want.
Whoa.
And what's crazy to me.
Also, Walter, you could tell, just like has a short man complex.
Like, I bet he's
so
himself. Charming. I mean, he pulls off army officer, even though he was never in the army.
He's someone who you could hold a conversation with, but like if you think about what he says for a little too long, you're gonna be get the ick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh. Did you really just say that? Oh, these are such cool shots.
And it's also what's crazy to me too, and I know we said this on this last episode, and it's like a corny shower
I
thought.
see the
snakes.
The snakes.
But it's like each one of these individuals had lives as like vivid as our own, and like their own dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
And you'll like, especially in some of the like first shots you have, there'll be photos of her jumping out of this car, right? And then behind her, there's like a horse-drawn wagon with a huge pile of like hay in the middle of this town.
Yeah.
Clearly to help feed like the city horses still, because that's like a main mode of transportation.
I guess
so it's just these two worlds. Oh, here's something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of fits into that narrative too of like there's a car, there's a camera, and a woman wearing pants, and behind her is this like old man bringing hay into the city to like feed animals still.
Yeah.
And this feels like two worlds that shouldn't be layered on top of each other. I saw something on history or on Twitter about like historical moments that shouldn't
saw something
exist.
On history.
Saw something about history on Twitter, and it was like historical moments that shouldn't exist at the same time but do. And it was a person born in the Eastern Roman Empire. So Western Roman Empire falls in like 455 CE.
Yeah.
But then the Eastern Roman Empire, which we call it the Byzantine Empire, like continues for another 1,000 years or so, like the mid 1400s.
Yep.
So a person born in the Roman Empire could have lived long enough to hear about the naming of Florida.
No.
Which was like, you know, the Spanish come across it and name it Florida like in the early 1500s.
Those facts are
I know.
Absolutely
it's just all
insane
fun.
to me.
I love history. And so that's the story. It's like nominally a Lover Scorned episode. There's not really like an overall arching narrative. Just
I mean, there are two lovers that kind of get scorned.
They both seem kind of like over this man by the time he dies.
Okay. Well.
In all my research about Walter Wonderwell, no moving eulogies were part of it all. And I'll tell you this much. Walter, not only does he not have his own website, doesn't even have his own Wikipedia page.
How?
Yeah, I don't actually know.
Insane.
Again, so overshadowed by his wife, positive
Wives.
way. True,
Yeah.
wives, but especially Aloha, that he doesn't even have his own page. Or if it does, it's not hyperlinked on her page, which wouldn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. When I tried to find more about Walter and his death, it was all just like, Aloha Wonderwell was the first woman to drive around the world. And it's like, I know that. How did her husband get murdered in the 30s? Or at least what happened to the boat?
I love that. I love that.
This was fun. It was like, I don't know how this would like fit anywhere else.
Yeah.
It was just kind of something where it's like, I know too much information now not to share this with somebody.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Hell yeah. I feel like our next theme is going to be a lot more like in it.
Into it.
Yeah.
Histories, mysteries.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
Do you know what you're covering?
There's a couple of different ones that I've looked at, including one. I'm gonna kind of like play with the format a little bit. It'll be fun. And I'm so excited for episode 3 of Histories Mysteries. Our dear friend of the pod, Maddie, will be joining us to talk about one of her Roman empires.
Our lonely listener, if you're out there,
right?
You know
if you know who we're talking about,
yeah, just like let us know.
She loves Les Mis.
Really loves Les Mis. Loves dogs.
All right.
Okay.
That was good.
That was good. I need to do a 1-minute summary, but you know what you need to
Oh,
do.
right. Time it.
A 1-minute summary of last week's episode.
Oh. Hold on. Then I need to go before you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can
hold
give
on.
you any updates or any reminders that you.
It's a Lover Scorned.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Give me the name of one person from last week's episode. Sorry.
Olga.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Olga, her husband Igor, the Drevlians.
And I need to get in under a minute.
And she was the Kievan Rus.
It all came back immediately.
Okay, perfectly.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I need to be able to see the timer.
Yes, I got it. God, Grant, calm down.
I'm just not going to do this badly.
I know, because you did it badly last time. I didn't even bother posting it.
I didn't know I was supposed to make it under a minute. I thought I was supposed to make it over a minute.
Which is really funny, because if you go to the episode the week before, you clearly state, get it under a minute, and then you like gave me roses for getting it to 1:03. So you knew. Dear listener.
I mean, what do I know? Knowledge is so ephemeral.
Okay. Anyway, are you ready?
I am.
3, 2, 1. I'm waiting for you to say your first word.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have notes on that. That's fine. Okay, so in this story, there are a lot of men, but the person you need to know is the woman in this story. There's a woman by the name of Queen Olga, whose husband is murdered when he goes off to demand tribute from a local town. This is in the Kievan Rus, which is an area in modern-day Ukraine. This like town kills the king. That's super unheard of.
I think it's technically prince and princess. But
prince and princess. Yeah. Okay. And they're like, Queen, we have killed your husband. Marry our leader, our little infant boy, and you can remain queen. And she's like, for sure. Like, send me your best men. Now send me more men. And now let's have like a banquet. And she just murks all of them. Total muck duck queen. And that's how she solidifies her rule. At the end of her life, she travels to Constantinople where she's like, I'm a Christian. And the emperor's like, we should get married. She goes, stop. And then she goes back to Ukraine and lives happily ever after. And her son is grateful for her.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Side note, to include in that minute, she like burns several cities. She buries a lot of people alive.
Muck duck to the
and then she sets afire a bathhouse that other people. She kills a lot of people.
I have a minute to do it, and you're like, oh, here's all the fun details. I have to do
That's literally why
I have to do the bones of the story. I'm still clearly not familiar with the structure of this, but that's fun.
It's a bit.
We're doing minute-long ads.
It's a TikTok, and someone's watching it, and they're like, are you kidding? It's how we get our stories.
Oh, okay.
Just like other side
like
of that.
Like a 60-second tease.
Yeah.
Can I redo that real quick?
Yes.
You can choose which one you want to keep.
Okay. That's fine. I'm keeping both of them in the episode. But,
fair.
Okay. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1.
In all the ways you can consolidate your rule, throwing a boat full of men into a pit in the ground probably isn't one you've ever heard of before. Hi, I'm Grant with Well I Laugh Podcast. And if you've ever wondered, how flammable is a bathhouse full of my enemies? We're here to tell you all about that. That and so much more. In last week's episode, Heads Will Roll, available wherever you get your podcasts.
He took the ad part of that and went 1,000%.
That's a good note, director. Thank you for the note. We ready to go? Places? I got this. Let's lock in.
That was good.
I think you have a couple.
It was good. Okay.
Right. Now that I know what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know.
But like the good in between of those two, you know? I liked We'll talk about it. Sorry, I have a lot of thoughts for something that I really don't need to have.
No,
a lot
that's
of
good
thoughts
because I, as a person who was like, oh, we just have to summarize it in a minute, and my little teacher brain was like, this is an assignment.
It was.
This is a lot more fun than what I thought we were.
Yeah,
doing.
we're just giving all the fun details and none of the bulk of the story.
I'll start on your first word.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. All right.
Yeah, think about what I just told you.
I just get so nervous.
Also, the
Don't
tough
look at
one
me.
is this, like, it is, I guess, chronological, but there's not like
It
a
was
true
nothing that
structure
you
to
said
it.
was chronological, so now I'm trying to like put it in order in my head. Okay. Okay. I'm ready. Our story starts out with a woman named Harriet, who is the first woman to drive in air quotes across the world. In reality, she actually was like sitting in the car and then they drove a little and then rode on a boat and then drove a little some more. So you're probably wondering, well, women traveling in the 1920s, tell me more about that. And boy, can we. It's a man named Walter Wanderwell, and he's not actually named Walter Wanderwell, but he marries a woman named Nell. And then they date, they get married for like 6 months, and then they're like, anyway, that's enough of that. Let's see who can travel the most. And then they just like never see each other again, and they get divorced. Anyway, at some point, Walter's like, I'm a little lonely. And so he meets someone named Idris. Idris eventually becomes Aloha Wanderwell. A lot of problems there. We can talk about it. And then they travel the world together and eventually get married, I guess. And then anyway, Walter dies on a boat and his ex-wives seem to live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
Good.
What do you think the episode of this one should be?
WWWD.
WWW. Hold on. WWWWD.
Yeah, four W's.
Yeah.
WWWWD. Just kidding. I don't know.
W dash what?
Yeah. We'll workshop it. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to our random little anecdotal stories and stories that Graham put together, I guess. If you want more content, we're on Patreon, Well I Laughed Podcast, and we're going to be doing some fun stuff over there in the coming weeks. And if you would like to email us your stories, we are wellileftpod@gmail.com. We do listener episodes every third episode of every theme. Our next theme is History's Mysteries, and you can find us on social media and our visual version of this on YouTube, Well I Laughed. And if you want to mail us, we've gotten a couple emails asking what our P.O. box is recently. It should be in our link tree on that's attached to any of our social medias, or you can message us and we'll give it to you. Anyway, that's I think it.
Amazing.
Okay, bye. We love you.
Bye.